Unfortunately, we also have to brace for the possibility of war as we continue to follow with great concern the bellicose rhetoric that comes to us from Azerbaijani leadership. And it's not only their words, it's their deeds. And war is hell. The excesses have been on all sides. There's been tragedy and loss for everybody in the conflict. But when you have video evidence of what uniformed Azerbaijani police officers did in December of 2005 at the medieval cemetery of Jura in Nakhichevan, where in broad daylight, one by one, they killed the thousands of Khachkars at Jura, how can you talk about a return to the status quo on today? If that had been a Semitic cemetery, the world would be rightly outraged. And in every forum, in Washington, in Strasbourg, at the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, that issue would have been on the agenda. But it was only an Armenian medieval cemetery. And this takes us back to the issue of rights. Those rights are also in question and under attack in Georgia and in the Armenian historic region of Javakh. Not only issues of linguistic, cultural minority rights for the Georgian Armenian population, but for the right of the Armenians of Javakh to live there as part of the Armenian patrimony, as part of the Armenian national security system, and as a very important link between Georgia and Armenia, two potentially strategic allies who still have to find their common way. And here too, you talk about Armenian diaspora relations. The Akhalkalak train station was recently privatized. Armenia or its organizations did not participate, and it was privatized by an Azerbaijani consortium. So, in this broad spectrum between evolution and revolution, we are seeking our new out. We want political resolution. We're not going to wait for this young generation to come into power and to opposition in Armenia. We have to deliver to them an Armenia that at least satisfies the minimum democratic and legitimate political benchmarks for a modern democratic state. We are a nation in crisis across the board. And it is imperative now, as was previously suggested by one of the discussants, that we embark upon, call it whatever you want, a grand national dialogue in advance of the next election cycle in the next couple of years. A grand national dialogue within Armenia, including the three coalition parties and the three major opposition representatives, including civil society and the NGOs. A grand national dialogue in diaspora to find the procedural, processual, and structural mechanisms to embark upon an Armenian diaspora partnership where the democratic and national agendas are one. So that we do not keep returning to these very fine and well-prepared conventions to share our woes as to why do we talk the talk, but we cannot implement on the great Armenian walk. And so, in the great dialogue also between Armenia and diaspora, we have to find that framework for a joint Armenia-centric but diaspora-inclusive framework of strategy, politics, economy, information and innovation, education, environment, public relations, and maintenance of identity in the 21st century. Edmund Burke, among many of the famous things he said the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And so I turn to you, ladies and gentlemen, and especially our youth. This is your agenda. It's your choice. It's your future, and it's our homeland. There is no other. And from now on, we shall not beg, because here on in, our answers lie within. No more blame game on our contemporary issues with respect to external actors. Our answers, our solutions lie within. They're right here. They're in Yerevan, they're in Stepanakert, and they're everywhere where the Armenian youth today gathers. Deep in the Soviet period, Badr Seva, the famous Armenian poet, said that, "Where is our salvation? In our hands, and alas, not in our hands." Perhaps as a great poet, we're here today in the post-Soviet realm, faced with these challenges, he would say, our salvation is in our hands, and alas, again, in our hands. Realize your potential. Live in reality, but never surrender the dream.